it says health science responses during COVID-19, whereby we're doing the comparison between two countries, which are Finland and South Africa. When we go back to our methodology slide, it was mentioned that in Finland, the study was focused on the devastating pandemic only. In Finland, the study was focused about the devastating pandemic only for the whole country, whereas in South Africa, it was provincially, specifically for Gauteng. So my question is, how do you balance the whole country versus provincially? Don't you think that maybe our states won't be balanced? Thank you so much.
Thank you for the excellent question. Sorry, here is an echo with the microphone, so it's hardly to hear. But your question was how about the methodology. We were studying Gauteng province and whole country. Okay, yes. In Finland, that was a whole country with the 5 million people, and then my colleague did own research in a Gauteng province, and we realized that it's not the whole South Africa, and that's what needs to be done. But I think our idea was that the Gauteng area is somehow comparable to Finnish system and Finnish society with the population and somehow like that. And of course, Dr. Tensa is a specialist in a area of Gauteng. So that was the reason for that.
I think if I understood you well, you are saying that they could be compared because they have a similar size in population? That's one of the reasons?
Well, when we are doing a comparison, it's not that simple. And I think from the research point of view, when you are analyzing the resilience of health system, the main point is that you are finding the similar cases. Because I think we can learn more if we are brave to take a different kind of environment like it is really in Finland and the Gauteng province. So there is a risks, but we need to realize them, and we need to take them account when we are analyzing the reliability, quality and trustfulness of the study.
I hope this has answered your question, but please feel free to interact with Hannah, during the tea break if you have more, precise questions. Just checking, is there one more question or one more comment? If not, it's going, gone. We thank you very much. That was really, really interesting. And we're now inviting the second group of speakers to come to the fore. Or are you the third one?
Thank you.
You are welcome. Unless you want to wait for your colleagues to show up. We can do that. We can wait a bit. I mean, the second group is not here with us. So if people have some patience and you are willing to wait, we will wait until the time comes. No worries. Excuse me, are you the second group of speakers?
Yes,
You, sorry? Okay, all right. It's just that I asked earlier who was available. So this is treatment of flu, gas. Okay. And you are Mr. Tau? Yes. Dr. Tau? Mr. Tau. All right, we do have a second group of speakers represented by Mr. Tau, who is going to talk to us about the treatment of flue gas desulfurization wastewater with freeze crystallization. Now, I'm saying words that I probably don't fully understand, so I hope I learn a lot from your presentation. Over to you.
Good morning, and thanks for the opportunity, and I'm hoping that I'm going to make it more clearer, because I think it's more of a broader technical words that we're using. So my name is Asa Senem Tau. So I am a Master of Engineering, Chemical Engineering postgraduate student at the Tshwane University of Technology. So today I'll be taking you through the wastewater treatment from Kusile Power Station, from the coal desulfurization plant section, which we are going to demonstrate how freeze crystallization can be a beautiful technology in terms of managing this wastewater saline stream, which actually causes a lot of cost on the rand per ton, on the kilowatt being sold to the South Africans. So this is the outline of my presentation. I'll be taking you through introduction, objective, materials and methods being used, result and discussion, conclusions, recommendations, references, and acknowledgement. So one would wonder what is actually wet flue gas desulfurization. So wet flue gas desulfurization is actually a technology that is being deployed in many countries in terms of managing wastewater streams from the desulfurization of flue gas that results from coal combustion activities. So in South Africa, in the scarcity of electrical energy that we do have, so Eskom power stations have really deployed different strategies in terms of generating electrical energy, which really makes to ensure that they need to reduce the SOx and NOx emissions to the environment, such that they actually comply to the environmental regulations. So the wet flue gas desulfurization is actually a good process that can be used or is currently being deployed at the stations, mainly into coal-fired power stations in South Africa, which is used to actually reduce the sulfur oxides, mainly sulfur dioxide emissions to the environment. So this technology really emits two actually waste streams, which is the solid waste and the liquid waste. So the primary focus of my study or research work really focused on the liquid waste, which was the effluent. So in a typical water intake, because when one operates a wet flue gas desulfurization plant, one needs to have a lime together with water to generate an alkaline slurry, which can be used, of course, in the scrubbing process to be in contact with the waste, with the flue gas that results from coal combustion. In that process, there is a forced oxidation taking place, where the flue gas start to be desulfurized, and then the solid waste in the form of gypsum becomes released. So that slurry is mainly constituted of calcium sulfate dihydrate, which is the gypsum, and the most liquid stream, which really need to be managed. So in that situation, one feeds the slurry, which is the wastewater, together with the concentration of calcium sulfate, and then we actually split the two streams on a vacuum belt filter. So in that process, that's when now the wastewater is being generated, or the effluent. So currently the power stations are actually managing this toxic waste by actually disposing it at the toxic site, which comes at a cost. And also the gypsum, which is a solid waste, it also being managed by sending it to landfill, which I think from a power station strategic objective, they were hoping to actually send it to the agricultural activities and the cement industry. So at the moment, the market is saturated in terms of having to use the gypsum in those applications. So my primary focus, like I mentioned, was to really look at the wastewater that has been generated to avoid it having to send it to waste toxic site, which comes at a specific cost. So having said that, so in terms of the disposal cost that has been actually forecasted, or the actual cost that the power station has paid over a duration of 4 months when 3 units were operational, actually the volume of water that has been generated was about 9.6 cubic meters of effluent, which was sent to the landfill, to the toxic site, which really came at the cost which amounted to something like 9.6 million rands that they are paying per month, while they are actually deploying certain technologies which can be used to manage this saline wastewater stream. So as I mentioned, the problem statement, which is the area of my focus, is to really assess or evaluate the flue gas desulfurization effluent using freeze crystallization as a suitable technology for treating this wastewater stream. So the objective that drive the study on an operational level, which is the specific objective, we looked at to develop an understanding of the operation of a coal-fired power station, and then look at the development of understanding of the sources of impurities that contributed to the poor water quality of the effluent being released from the power station. So also we look at the cost comparison at the effluent in order to manage the effluent before we send it to landfill, or to actually treat it with other treatment methodologies, which looks at treatment with softening coupled with evaporation, which we can be an energy intensive method of managing the wastewater. And also, of course, looking at the current practice, which is actually disposal at the toxic site. So we actually focused at using freeze crystallization to compare these two options. So in terms of materials and methods that has been we've been used, flue gas desulfurization wastewater has been collected from a Kusile power station and really treated directly with a freeze crystallization pilot plant, which is situated at Rock Water Technologies site in Gauteng, in Olfantsfontein, Clayville. So the feedstock of the Kusile wastewater was at the pH of 7.7, and then conductivity were at 7.5 millisiemens per centimeter. And then we actually processed this wastewater stream using this pilot plant continuously. And then in terms of the experimental exercise that what I've conducted, we looked at comparison of the cost of the effluent management for the following scenarios. As mentioned, was disposal at the toxic site, treatment with softening plus evaporation, and also looking at the freeze crystallization as a treatment method. So continuing in terms of the methodology being used as well, we used a spreadsheet-based modeling to understand the coal-fired power station, particularly at the desulfurization site or section of the plant. And also we used the OLI simulation software, which we used to predict the water quality of the flue gas wastewater, typically for chemical pre-treatment with alkalis, and also when treated with freeze crystallization. And in terms of the analysis being conducted, we looked at temperature, TDS, pH, and conductivity. So looking at the results and the discussion, so having explained how typically one operates within a flue gas desulfurization plant, we see that, for an example, pulverized coal will get fed to the combustion chamber at 25 degrees centigrade temperature. And then where the boiler gas, which is the flue gas that needs to be managed, it then passes through the electrostatic precipitators, where it then feeds to the wet scrubber. That's where the desulfurization process takes place. And in that situation, that's where the alkaline slurry become in contact with the flue gas, thereby absorbing the sulfur dioxide being available in the flue gas. Then in that forced oxidation reaction, we then, of course, had some modeling to say the flue gas will actually leave the wet scrubber at 85 degrees centigrades, while the gypsum slurry, which need to be dewatered to generate the effluent that needs to be managed, it then passed through the vacuum belt filter at the same temperature of 85 degrees centigrades. And we then, like I mentioned, to say current practice is that the gypsum being formed, which is the calcium sulfate dihydrate, is then managed at the landfill, which of course also comes at the cost. So one needs to look at the beneficiation of that solid waste stream. And then currently then the saline wastewater effluent is then treated with freeze crystallization. together with pre-treatment and evaporation as mentioned. So these are the results which we have done in terms of the modeling exercise on a spreadsheet. In terms of what is more interesting really is just to look at the movement of the total dissolved solids, which gives us a better indication in terms of the efficiency in terms of our modeling exercise, and also of course looking at the freeze crystallization technology being a suitable treatment technology compared to a thermal treatment through evaporation. So on that note, we see that before crystallization, the total dissolved solid were at 157,000 milligrams per liter, and then while treated with freeze crystallization, they then reduced to about 19,000 milligrams per liter. So in terms of water losses, it was also important for us to understand what losses of water we are experiencing when we are desulfurizing the flue gas. So it was noted that during the evaporation, during the scrubbing process, because of the flue gas coming at a high temperature, we then realized that there's a water loss which amount to about 492 cubic meters an hour, which really need to be compensated via a makeup water, which can be from a nearby river. And we realized that we need to compensate to about 880 cubic meters an hour. So for the treatment at the pilot plant, what was being fed, the volumes of the industrial wastewater from the station, we fed about 117 liters of water, which has been processed. And then in terms of, because of freeze crystallization is actually a good technology in which one treats wastewater depending on the solubility levels of the solid. So in that situation, one generates a heavily concentrated stream together with clean water production in the form of ice. So during that process, we realized that the ice generation, when one feeds, of course, the 177 liters of water, the ice production were about 50 kilograms within an 8 hours run. So also looking at the conductivity of the melted ice, we realized that as we treat the wastewater, the conductivity start to drop on the ice side, which indicate that the water becomes purer and purer as we generate ice, and of course, waiting for the ice to really start to clear on a filter. So while on the other side, the silent wastewater stream, which is the concentrate stream, it becomes more concentrated with the electrical conductivity as an indication. So on the far left, on the far right, I mean to say, it's actually the picture of the ice being produced during the process. In terms of energy consumption for the cooling process, we realized that energy being utilized is about 11 kilowatt hour per ton of water being treated, while theoretically the target is about 3.5 kilowatt hour per ton. So for the ice formation process, we realized that the energy being utilized was about 299 kilowatt hour per ton, relative to about 92 kilowatt hour per ton theoretically. So this is one of the cost indication in terms of running a typical freeze crystallization process compared to evaporation. So we realized that there's a lot of costs which are incurred in terms of evaporation treatment, because we need to pre-treat the wastewater, which really see that we've got about 11 million rands that we need to spend per month, compared to about 960,000 rand on freeze crystallization process. So conclusion that has been drawn in the study, which is of more interest, is in general is that one can be able to treat the wastewater using freeze crystallization at the right quality levels. And then of course the cost comparison is that the disposal at the cost at the toxic site, we're looking at 9.5 and 9.7 million rand per month, which is currently what the power station is bleeding almost every month. Then for chemical pretreatment coupled with evaporation, we're looking at about 11 million rand per month, which is currently what is being under commissioning stage at the moment at the station. Then my beautiful research then said, how about we then explore freeze crystallization, which will just only give you a cost of about 3 million rand per month. So in terms of acknowledgements, these are the sort of a list of the sponsors which catered the study, and then they are really highly appreciated. Then recommendation drawn is that it is recommended that the wastewater from the flue gas plant can be treated with freeze crystallization, as the cost, of course, it is way significantly lower in comparison to disposal at the toxic site together with evaporation. So this was just a minor sort of a biography. So that's the end of my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Tao. I'm going to tackle it not from as the chemistry expert side, but just saying that we all know that optimization of our power plants is what we're looking for, and one of the issues are costs. So I think it's very interesting what you're doing. From the audience, any questions, any comments, any thoughts you would like to share? Okay, there's a hand at the back. Maybe if you come a little bit closer. Morning.
Okay, so thanks for the question. So we actually didn't look at TDS. When we look at my thesis, I think all the outlines of what has been monitored actually is being definitely described. But we actually use ICP, of course, to look at the elements evolution in terms of having to treat the wastewater to say what are we actually, what is the trend in terms of treating the wastewater using freeze crystallization, and of course, and looking at the modeling exercise, which can give us a better correlation in terms of the same trend for when we treat it directly with the industrial plant.
Okay, and then I saw somewhere your TDS was sort of like reducing and stuff. Why instead you didn't opt to do only maybe conductivity and or not conductivity, both conductivity and TDS, because they have a relationship of 6.8 if I'm not mistaken. If you take your conductivity and you divide it by 6.8, you get your TDS, and if you multiply your TDS, you get a summation like around the same value of the TDS. So why were you doing like the both of them and stuff?
I'm not sure if I get you. Please repeat.
I understand your study, you're trying to desulfonate and stuff. So I'm asking you, why were you like focusing on doing both TDS and conductivity, as they have a relationship of 6.8? If you take your conductivity, you divide by 6.8, you get your TDS. And if you take your TDS, I'm saying they have that relationship. If you take your values now, the ones that you have, and you divide by 6.8, you'll realize that it's giving you your TDS. And if you multiply your TDS, it's giving you a value close to your conductivity.
Yeah,
so
I think it actually, thanks for the question. I think that was actually part of our modeling exercise that we had on the spreadsheet. Of course, I think we actually used these two analysis or analytical methods because we only had those, like you said, you're from TUT, so we didn't have much of equipment available for us to be able to do other techniques that we can use to monitor the quality of the wastewater. Like I said, we also use ICP, but it's so unfortunate that I didn't actually indicate the results. But we looked at sodium, we looked at potassium, we looked at chlorides, because they were also contributing to the poor quality of wastewater. But I think I'll be able to share with you my thesis, which I'm hoping to get 80%. All right.
Great.
Thanks.
Thank you very much. Let's thank Mr. Tao once more and wish him good luck with the end of his thesis.
Thank you.
Right. So now for this morning session, we have one last group of speakers. Mr. or Mrs. Mwanza, Dan Bolt, and do I say Stranger or do I say Stranger?
Stranger.
Okay, you say it then. No, Stranger Johansson, who are going to talk to us about Storybooks Zambia and Storybooks Norway, multilingual digital stories for language and literacy training, learning rather. Over to you.
Thank you. We are going to present a result or a project stemming from an international collaboration between the University of Zambia School of Education and the Faculty of Education at Inland Norway University of Applied Sciences. And I'm Anne-Marit Danbolt. This is my colleague Espen Stranger Johannessen, and David Mwanza at the University of Zambia couldn't attend this conference because of other obligations at the University of Zambia. This project is a NORPART project. It started in 2017, and it's part of a long-standing collaboration between the University of Zambia and Inland Norway University of Applied Sciences. It started as far back as in 2008, when there was established 2 master degree programs, or actually the same master degree program at the University of Namibia and the University of Zambia. And many graduates have come out of this project and are still serving the educational sector in both countries. And in 2017, we were very fortunate to have a new project, new collaborative project, the NORPART project, Literacy Education in Multilingual Settings, which is primarily an exchange program. And we have had several exchanges, which I will show a bit later, and we have established international teaching practice. And as we are going to present now, also academic collaboration through education and research. Well, our project is in literacy. And in our context, we talk about literacy as the ability to learn to read and write, but also in a much wider context. How do we actually use our literacy? For what purposes? In what contexts? And as the United Nations Policy Paper 24 of 2016 says, if you don't understand, how can you learn? So literacy and language are very closely intertwined. And we look upon our collaboration as part of achieving the sustainable goals of the United Nations, number 4, quality education. I would now like to show you some pictures of what we have done so far. We're nearly there, but we have had a lot of exchanges during these years. Apart from the 2 years of the pandemic, but then we have been granted 2 years no-cost extension, for which we are very grateful. So here you see the exchange students from the University of Zambia coming to Norway. And we have so far 11 PhD students who have done 3 months of coursework at our PhD program in university, and also 15 master students who have come for 3 months of exchange. And we have also students who have traveled from Norway to Zambia, 6 who have done 3 months of study at the University of Zambia. And in the top picture, you will see the first coordinator, the late Dr. Dennis Banda, who passed away very sadly last year. And on his side is Dr. David Mwanza, and our 4 first students. On the right-hand side, the 3 student teachers are the very first student teachers to go to Zambia for teaching practice. So that is an outcome of this project, and we will continue this students' exchange and teaching practice even after the project has ended. And last week we had our closing conference in Lusaka with many former students, exchange students, staff at the University of Zambia, and staff from our Faculty of Education, and many teachers from schools that we have visited. So that's the background. And now we will take you into the project that we are going to present now, Storybooks Zambia. And we won't say much about Storybooks Norway.
Thank you, Anna-Marit. I thought I would show you this, so maybe I can even just click here. Great. Let's see here, 1 second. So I will take you to the website. Yeah, great, there's no internet. That happens. 1 second. So this website that we get a glance of here that I'm trying to load. Let's see if you are online. There we are. So this website, as you will see, is not just about Storybooks Norway, Storybooks Zambia, but these are the, let's see here, some of the sites. I'll just show you very briefly Storybooks Norway. But I won't, I thought I would present Storybooks Zambia more in detail. If this one will just load. Doesn't look like the reception is very promising. Well, the idea is at least that we have a collection of 40 storybooks. There you go. And so this is the Norwegian site. So it is in Norwegian, as some of you will recognize, and some of you can, can just guess, or I can take my word for it. So these are not really loading, but I will take you to the Zambian site, which is in English, so it's a little bit easier to follow. Let's see here, Zambia. So the idea is that we have a collection of stories that can be read, well, in the, what should I call that even, like the national language, so Norwegian in Norway and in English in Zambia. But of course, as Anna-Marit was just talking about the importance of the language when we're talking about literacy, so we need to be, consider which languages are we talking about, which language, which. So a story like I Like to Read, you can read this one in English. And you can easily navigate by clicking on these buttons or scrolling. So it's very accessible. Who can I read to? My sister is asleep. You can read the same story in let's say, Chinyanja, which they use in Lusaka, where we were just now. So you have the same story in multiple languages. This is Nyanja, and you navigate in the same fashion. So you can read the story, you can click, or you can scroll as you wish. And you can also easily switch to English, or in Norwegian site it would be Norwegian. So you can, by clicking a button, you can get the translation. So I'm not even going to try to read this, but in English, who can I read to? We'll translate into this phrase in Nyanja, or any of the other languages used in the schools in Zambia. They use 7 languages. They speak many more, but like in South Africa, there are also more than the 11 languages that we keep hearing about, but these are the ones that are used in school and education. And one important point also is that we have audio. At least we're actually developing this, but this is a bit of a demo. But if this one works, maybe it's too slow. Sorry. Anyway, we're supposed to have that also, but it doesn't seem to be working right now. I don't know if it helps to do it in English. But anyway, so that is the site at a glance. And the people behind it are David Manza, who's the head of Storybooks Zambia, actually, who was supposed to be here today, but he had other commitments in Zambia, and other colleagues from the University of Zambia that we've been working with and developing this site. Yeah. Sorry. flipping between the two. There you go, that's better. Yes, so there's Christine Manza, Agnes Chileshi Chibamba, Sitwe Benson Mkandawira, and yes, and us. So anyway, the important part of this is that we, and perhaps rather the reason why we can develop something like Storybook Zambia and Storybooks Norway or other regional sites is that we've made a framework that is very easily adaptable across countries and languages. So, you know, because we had a framework in place, we could quite easily make Storybooks Afghanistan. That's done. You know, so we have this site, we have Storybooks Norway, which is in Norwegian it's called Barnebøker for Norge, and then we have a number of other sites, and then there's Storybooks Zambia that we just had a look at. And like I said, because we have taken great care to make a framework that can be translated and adapted across languages and across countries, the interface is easy to translate, the data structure is used, we can use the stories in English or Afrikaans or, you know, across sites. So that's an important feature. And just briefly about the background. So the stories that you just saw, well, you saw one of them at least, and the other 40, they come from an initiative called African Storybook, which is a South African, from Sadie actually, you might have heard of that institution. That have a large, I think it's more than 1,000 stories. They have a large number of stories, and it's one of many initiatives. You know, many initiatives provide stories, many in English, but also in other languages. But importantly, what we have done is, rather than just being a collection of stories, we have focused on the multilingualism. Like, it's very easy to switch languages. We have audio. They're printable, so they're very accessible. So we kind of try to do something a little bit more specific than just throwing a bunch of stories online and say, go figure things out. So that's kind of our approach. But we are building on these other people. So it's all about leveraging resources that are already available and then adding some kind of added value, doing something more. I don't think I really need to say much about how storybooks are important for reading, other than that they are very important for reading, especially in the language that students actually speak. And extensive reading is important, more than just, you know, reading textbooks. And as I mentioned, in Zambia we have 7 languages that are used in teaching literacy. So we have all those 7 languages. They're actually, like I said, there's still some issues with proofreading. We're still kind of working on that. It's proving quite challenging, but we are developing these stories to provide, and, you know, to meet a major need of materials. And so some important features. This is just not a collection of stories that you will find in at least some places, but these are also parallel texts. So you can read in different languages, and you can read the same story. Sometimes you might have a teacher who speaks a different language than the students, especially in Norway. That's very often the case, but you will find that here also. People speak different languages, so it's possible to read the same story and we recruited a number of people to ensure the quality across a number of languages. Some of them are a bit smaller and often more challenging. Just a final word on, you know, so how do we use these stories? Because, you know, a lot of people don't have cell phones or computers either at home or in school. And then, so one possibility is to write stories on the blackboard, like this. You can have, yeah, it's often easier than to think of your own story. You can write it on manila paper like this, and you can keep it and reuse it many times. It's also a creative way of doing it. Or you can print booklets. We do provide booklets on the website, or at least we are working on that at least. And if you do have a projector or smartphone, there's also possibilities of using that, and then you get the audio, etc. So on that note, I think we just have to say thank you and open up the floor for questions before we break for tea. So thank you. Tack.
Excellent. Thank you very much for that lively and very informative presentation at the same time. Thank you very much. Questions, comments, ideas? I can't see any hands. I can see hands. Okay, I'm coming down with the mic. Right. 1, 2, 1, 2. Don't fight.
Thank you so much for a very interesting presentation and a very interesting project. I was just wondering about the stories. Are the stories also Zambian, or is it like general stories that are translated into the languages, or do you also collect local stories from the different sites? Thank you.
Thank you for that question. All 40 stories come from the African storybook, so you'll find these, and also many other stories. And so all stories are African, written by Africans, and I believe all are also illustrated by Africans, but they come from different, Africa's not just one country. So I know some are from Kenya, some are from South Africa, and many of them, honestly, I just don't know where they're from. But I know they're just from across Africa. And as for, because we sometimes get this, what about other stories? What about having, local stories or other stories? And the answer is simply that if people want to write stories or maybe have stories written that they want to share, to put online, share openly for free of use, I encourage you to go to africanstorybook.org and you can submit stories there. So our set of stories, because of the interface and because of the audio and various features, we've decided to limit ourselves to just a selection. I like to think of it as a first start. You can have a look at those, and you want to read more stories, we will tell you of other sites that will also have more stories. Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation. You mentioned very briefly that you have a framework so that it makes it easier to translate to other languages. Could you maybe take us through that?
Yes. So as I mentioned, as you maybe saw, we have, I think we have 51 sites, and that sounds quite impressive probably, but it's only possible because we made it very easy. We will simply, if someone said, let's create a Storybooks Botswana or Storybooks Fiji or something like that, Afghanistan, we'll simply give them a Google Doc. So a simple document with the text in English, and it'll be something like, you'll have a phrase like, more stories, or go to next page. These phrases that are all over the website, right? And you simply translate that little phrase into your language, whether it's Afghan, Dari or any language, right? Swedish. So it's very, very simple. And this is a few hundred words. Anyone can do that, anyone with a computer. Just get in touch with us, and we will translate the interface. It's not a lot of work. We will do all the technical side. We just need some, because we don't speak 51, whatever languages. We barely speak, English and Norwegian. But so that's how it's done. And similarly, translation of the stories. There's also a very simple interface. So you translate page by page through an online interface. So we ensure that you get the right match, because I can't tell if this. In the Bele translation is, I just have to take people's word for it and rely on the interface, and it works. It works really nicely. And please get in touch with me if you are interested in this. I can give you more information without doubt.
Thank you for your presentation. I have a kind of a follow-up question of what the first question was. I was looking at the illustrations, and how do you make sure that that the illustrations, make some meaning for the reader as well? It reflects the living standard, the type of beds, the environment that the reader has. Thank you.
Yes, I think some illustrations are very helpful in understanding the text, and some are quite clear. There's a clear correspondence between images, and sometimes it's a bit should I say, more opaque. There's less of a correspondence. And some, curiously, just a few days ago, we were in Zambia, and someone commented on the clothes. There was this young girl. She was, wanted to play football. And there's, oh, but she looks like a boy. And is it a girl? Is it a boy? They were, started discussing. And I haven't actually thought about it too much. She had like this kind of, dress code. But I think what is interesting about that is that it opens up an opportunity to discuss whether it's gender in clothing, whether it's, what you see in the streets, and anything you see that might be, oh, this doesn't look like, what we have, or it does look like the same, like any of these breaks with expectations or with culture, it also allows for that kind of discussion. So I think it's actually very valuable. Is there, why do boys have certain clothes? Why do girls have certain clothes? Is this, that was a South African story actually. We were discussing this in Zambia. But even then there were these differences that people were like, oh, this doesn't look like what clothes girls would wear. So I think it just opens up that opportunity to address these questions.
Right, we'll have just one more question or comment, and then we'll go for tea break. Over to you.
Thank you. I see that you talk about multilingualism. I just want to know, to what extent do you use translanguaging in your stories and in the classroom? Thank you.
Well, thank you for that question. And what is interesting is that translanguaging is actually very much researched now in Zambia. So in our conference last week, we have 2 presentations about the potential of translanguaging in the classroom. And I think this website actually opens up for translanguaging. You will be able to have, for instance, 2 languages in a page, so you can discuss language differences if you want. And just a kind of a last comment, because it's important to develop the resources, but we realize that the implementation and the use of the stories will be as perhaps even more important, because we have to work with teachers to see how can they make use of this resource. So that is in a way the next step in this project, because I think teachers must find ways of using it. It's not enough just to present a resource. We must go together with the teachers to see how it can be developed further. So thank you.
Thank you very much for the presentation, for all the comments and the questions. I think we can continue that conversation over tea. There's tea outside. I know we have limited time. Let's grab a cup of coffee, a cup of tea, and come back for the next plenary. Thank you all for your attention.
thought it was me, but I see these guys. Oh, okay. I just prepared this presentation. Because I just check. What is the date for this? This is Thursday. This is. Okay, that is in the Is it me, Kanu? Okay. So I use that one? Okay. Yes.
For everybody.
Le nna ke le ke go roma ke email e bone.
E bone. Mara o tjana hore o e check out ditlo.
No. Yeah, by the way, it's Nageng. Ntate Nageng. Yeah.
A krata di slides tja go bona. Nna ke ma go ba tja paselana tja. Paselana tja ka di sori di taba tja bayo. Bayo.
SANORD, there is this one.
Go check out there.